Alrighty, we are back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. It's Location Weekly, episode number 532. And we're recording live on August the 31st. Yes, it is the last day of August. We are on the verge of September. The summer is coming to an end. And kids are back to school, all sorts of, sort of things like that happening. So, how are you, Brianna?
I'm good. I spent the weekend celebrating a trip around the sun. And so, um, you know, just feeling happy, motivated, thankful, all those things that you think about around birthday time. So that's good. And looking forward to a holiday weekend coming up here in the States. So things are good.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday again. Yeah. Always a fun time. And yeah, I'm sure you were well celebrated. But yeah, so we have a good show for you this week. Four stories as per usual, and I'll just let Aubriana jump right into it and kick us off.
All right. So let's go talk a little bit about Amazon and what they're doing in Chicago, specifically at the Avondale Park District. So these are, government owned public parks, and Amazon is putting lockers in them. And this has been getting a little bit of, I would say, more negative feedback than anything that we're seeing right now. But what's interesting is the park district is set to make, somewhere between like 90 and 135 grand in the first full year off of these lockers and kind of renting that space out to Amazon. But it's causing a lot of controversy because they're trying to put these delivery lockers in more than 100 different public parks. And the criticism is really that the amount of revenue that it's generating is not justifying the intrusion, not to mention the massive budget that the parks in general have, which for I think for their the park district's budget overall is like $481 million. So a small little 135 grand at the most really seems kind of questionable, considering the amount of revenue that Amazon will be generating off of these lockers and having them there. So I know that we love the idea of having lockers in shopping malls, or that ease of use for pickup, and I think in bigger cities it makes a lot of sense. What's interesting though is there's no talk about maybe making this more of like a revenue share, or allowing the park to share in the profits or give back and investing in the park district, based upon the revenue that those drive. So, most people are just saying it's just not enough for the intrusion. So it's interesting to see like how people are responding. Some of the photos of the lockers went viral on social media, and that's where a lot of the criticism started. And this is not the first negative press that Amazon has had. There's been a lot of conversation around obviously like the workplace environment and the conditions that the Amazon task force actually endures. So I think that the city agencies launching like some review of the plans and putting further installations on hold until that review is complete right now. But one thing that they called out that that resonated with me was that if there is an opportunity for these lockers to or this type of commerce availability within the park, it really should first go to those local entrepreneurs and small businesses that are in that area and in that community, and support them. And I wholeheartedly agree. I think that as much as all of us love the convenience factor of Amazon and having something delivered immediately, we also really want to be able to support small businesses. And sometimes it's hard to be able to have both. But if there is a way to streamline that, I think that's a win. I would love to see Amazon better partner with small businesses, although that's not their business model, right? To help drive those deliveries. And I would love to see something more fruitful come out of this. Than it being, I don't understand. I think there's a way to maybe use these lockers as perhaps like an art installation and allow local artists to paint on one side of them or do something very unique there, as well as partner with the small businesses in the community to allow them to have like the first dibs on delivery in those lockers as well. So I'd love to see something positive come out of this, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add to this. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good move for the Parks District to find ways to sort of, offset their budget requirements and generate revenue. I think every part of government should be trying to find alternative methods of revenue generation. So I applaud that. I'm with the sentiment here though on like why Amazon versus creating opportunities for local entrepreneurs and small businesses. I think that should be their first sort of thought, right? Is what can we do to sort of take this park and which is really for the local people, and connect it with the community further and integrate it further with the community. By opening up opportunities and finding ways to collectively generate revenue. I think for both the community and for the parks to offset their budget. So I share in that disappointment. I think the other thought that kind of popped into my head around this is, I don't know about you, but a lot of the parks here in Toronto, where I am, there's a fair bit of homelessness in downtown Toronto. People sleeping in parks or what have you. I'm sure that's the same in Chicago and all kinds of other big cities. And so I wonder about the nature of this particular use case and whether that actually is it sort of de-incentivizes folks who are homeless from leaving the parks, because now it's like, hey, I can live in the park and I can get my Amazon package delivered to me while I'm there. It's I don't know. I mean, like it's kind of crazy to me that's sort of what they've settled on here as the way to generate revenue. From an Amazon point of view, I don't begrudge them at all. I mean, they're always looking for ways to grow their footprint and shorten the last mile and get product to people as close to where they live as they can. So, for them, this is a good deal. But yeah, I'm challenged on the other side of it.
For sure.
All right, on to our second story. So our friends over at Oskar Meyer Wieners have teamed up with Lyft. So this is really interesting. We've covered before the Oskar Meyer Wiener Mobile, which is this like car that drives around and it's shaped like an Oskar Meyer Wiener, and it's kind of like kitschy and cool and like an interesting thing to see driving around the streets or your neighborhood. And in the past, they've done collaborations with Airbnb where you can rent it out, and people have used it for marriage proposals or taken it to Alaska, or done interesting trips on it. It's been all across the U.S. In all 50 states. But for the first time now, they're teaming up with Lyft and linking it to the rideshare app. So for a very limited kind of marketing promotional campaign here, they're surprising Lyft XL riders with free Wienermobile trips in some of their most popular cities. So this is happening in New York, Chicago, LA, and Atlanta, your former home. And basically, if you call the Lyft XL, you may be surprised in a once-in-a-lifetime trip in the Oskar Meyer Wienermobile to get from wherever you're trying to go to that destination. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. It kind of sort of puts their brand back in front and center with folks and connects it to a different audience here with Lyft. This is a campaign that's already done now. It just ran August 25th to 27th. I think it's interesting, and it's like a full-on experience. So like you get in there and it's like music and neon lights, and they give you free shirts and hot dog masks and all kinds of things. So it's kind of fun, and I think it's a neat sort of surprise and delight for people who book on Lyft XL and don't know what they're going to get for their ride. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, super fun. I mean, I think it would be great, like especially with kids, to have some type of experience like that. It makes me laugh to think about like a group of business executives like hopping into they're just ordering a black Suburban and here shows up the Oskar Meyer Wiener mobile. is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think that this goes just ties to like that experiential type of marketing, doing something that has an impact, especially around everybody. Besides, it's not just the people who get to go in it, but everyone who sees it driving around as well. Just brand awareness, kind of more organic and grassroots type of thing. So I think it's fun. I love that they're people are out and about and moving again in the city to an extent. So just being able to kind of pull that in and make the summer end with something fun is a good campaign.
Yeah, and they did tie it into their social media as well. So like you can follow Oscar Meyer and Lyft on Twitter, and there's a hashtag Wienermobile Lyft and all of that sort of stuff. So that's cool too that people are sharing and posting about it and generating some content for them around the campaign. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about moving things, maybe things a little bit more importantly than Oscar Mayer Wieners would be FedEx is now working with vaccination distribution. So they are leveraging sensors for this last mile distribution. Obviously, there's been a large demand for the vaccinations, and the distribution is very intricate as different vaccines need to be kept different ways, right? Whether that's just cooled or how quickly they have to be used and all of those things. So there's a lot of challenges around the logistics for that. So FedEx is using a variety of different technologies like AI, machine learning, IoT, near real time delivery, cloud, all these different things that they're referencing to make sure that the delivery of the COVID vaccines are happening effectively across the globe. So they are using these sensor-based logistics. There's one that they had launched back in 2009 called SenseAware. So that's a supply chain platform. So this really just has like the ability to connect with different mobile networks. And then they just added in something called SenseAware ID, which was launched in 2020. So this is like a compact sensor that allows the tracking of a shipment cycle of the vaccine. So it's this lightweight sensor. You can connect to like Wi-Fi and access this across the FedEx network so that it can make sure that everything's meeting the correct requirements, such as like the controlled environment, the temperatures being controlled. It would have GPS kind of signals that are happening during the shipments. So in March of this year, they started tracking and monitoring the COVID-19 test samples for the testing centers to the research labs. And then they're also using another platform called FedEx Surround, which is using real-time data to monitor and ensure the safe handling and deliveries of these vaccines. So what's interesting though is that the suite that's collecting all these data points is not only using FedEx's scanning and IoT, but also using Microsoft's suite of AI and ML and analytics solutions. So that's interesting to me because you think of like Bill Gates, Microsoft, also Bill Gates, lots of like vaccination work. And so I find that very interesting that those are being used in conjunction. But I think this is, it's really important because I think there's a lot of questions around the vaccine, how quickly, it came out and people have concerns. So what we really need to do is make sure that those are kept safe and that we can ensure that they are, delivered in the manner and used in the means that they need to be. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that they are kept the way that the manufacturers have said they need to be effective. So I think that this is great that, we're again using technology to track and follow things through, be able to keep things correct, and just ensure the safety of this and get these vaccines distributed for the people and in the areas that they are needed and wanted. So that's it.
Yeah, and so just to add a little bit to that, like I would say that for me the interesting thing about this story is that obviously we've been we've been covering location tech for a long time now, and to see it so mainstream, in something that is touching virtually every citizen in the country at the moment because of the importance of the vaccine rollout. I think is amazing to see that our industry is, has that kind of impact and reach, at this point, right? And so that, this platform, in terms of how it uses the sensors and the GPS and location data to track where things are, I think is one thing. But, the marriage of the location data with the other real-time sensor information, like, because obviously many of these vaccines are temperature sensitive and things like that, you have to be kept cold and all of that. And so the monitoring of those things in real time and where they are along the route, from first mile to last mile, and all of that, I think is fascinating and yet critical, right? Because if something doesn't get there, in time, or it's damaged along the way, you need to be able to know that so that you're not wasting time or impacting people's health, or knowing that this batch has gone bad and it needs to be thrown out and it's not mistakenly, injected into somebody. All those kinds of things, like, are really important. And it all comes down to real-time tracking and real-time or near real-time data, right? In terms of knowing where things are and there's the status of those items, right? So I quite like this, and I think it's great to see companies like FedEx sort of, investing in technology and sort of making that type of information available. So very cool.
Yeah.
All right, final story is an acquisition in our industry. So there's a company called Appen Limited. It's APPEN, and they are a company that's focused on training data for organizations that build effective AI systems at scale. So they're about training AI platforms. And they've signed a deal to acquire a location data analytics company called Quadrant. So Quadrant is, been around for a little while now. They're, one of the key players in the POI space in particular. And so they have a product called GeoLancer, which they say is, delivers accurate, up-to-date, and manually verified POI data. And so, these two companies are coming together. For Quadrant specifically, they see this as an opportunity to expand the global reach of their GeoLancer platform. Appen already works with over 1 million workers in 170 countries. So, it's sort of big reach geographically, and I think is a good move for Quadrant, who's been around since 2014. Quadrant itself has over 450 million unique devices that they see every month in all the countries that they cover. So pretty decent density of data coverage there, and so on. And as far as the terms of the deal, they're acquiring 100% of the share capital of Quadrant. Appen is making an upfront cash payment of $25 million and an additional investment of $20 million in Appen shares to be issued upon certain revenue milestones in the coming years. So a good deal all around, I think. Appen's based in Sydney, Australia, and like I said, has pretty big global reach, in terms of the countries that they cover. So, any thoughts on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's encouraging for the location space and for kind of the POI data, or perhaps even more of like the analytics side of things, to see this type of an acquisition happening right now. I know that we've seen more, I would say, like consolidation, whereas I feel like this is actually very complementary to grow and scale the business on both sides. So I think it's encouraging in that nature, that we're seeing this as more of potentially like an expansion of services and a betterment of that, rather than just consolidating things together in terms of like the services that they provide. So I think that this is kind of like, in some ways, when you think of how Foursquare and Placed and Factual, kind of are all lumped in together now, to me, that was very, a lot of that was very aligned around the same services, whereas this to me seems a little bit more complementary and expansive. So that's my only thought and feedback there.
Yeah, and to just add to that, like I think that it does speak to sort of the maturing of our industry overall. Like, we've seen a lot of acquisitions, we've seen a lot of M&A activity, in the last year. Some of it driven by COVID, and other things, and changes to privacy rules and whatnot. But I think we're going to continue to see this type of activity. I think obviously we just talked about the X Mode acquisition the other week and so on, right? So we're going to see more and more of this. But I think it's good for the industry to see some of these players come together and kind of make bigger, stronger, more geographically diverse offerings in our industry. So that's it. That's our show for this week. You've been listening to episode number 532 of Location Weekly. We thank you so much for your time. Please reach out if you have story ideas, feedback for us. And of course, we'll be back next week with another show. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.